Hey guys, Natalia here, an English-speaking tour guide, interpreter, translator, a teacher, and an English-speaking narrator. And what follows is yet another story of one of Kiev's landmarks. I'm now standing in one of Kiev's neighborhoods called Podil in Ukrainian and Podol in Russian. The building behind me is Kiev's oldest and most revered synagogue. It goes without saying that this Jewish church could not stay open after the Russian Revolution of 1917, which brought communists to power. At least not for a long time. It was bound to be closed down by communists, and closed it was. But 12 years later, in 1929, it was reopened in 1945 after World War II, and remained the only operational synagogue until, guess what, the mid-1990s. In other words, for 50 years, the members of Kiev Jewish community came here to perform religious rituals and to study the Torah. The building is 128 years old, as it emerged in the last decade of the 19th century. At the time, Kiev was one of the biggest cities of the Russian Empire. In 1891, it was home to 12 Jewish prayer houses. All of them were rather unimposing small buildings or modest rented premises. Multiple pleas of Kiev Jews to the city authorities to allow them to build a big choral synagogue seemed to fall on deaf ears. Moreover, in 1893, that is 2 years before this building was put into operation, the Minister of Internal Affairs of the Russian Empire maintained Jews must not be allowed to build a choral prayer house either in the center of Kiev or in its outskirts. Since Kiev was not part of the Pale of Settlement, Jews weren't allowed to reside in it except for certain neighborhoods. No doubt the Pale of Settlement was a discriminatory practice which prescribed where the Jews were allowed to settle, whether permanently or temporarily. Also, the permission to build synagogues in Kiev was given personally by the Russian Minister of Internal Affairs, who, as I said, adopted a prohibitive stance on this issue. But there was one loophole, one easing in the law Kiev Jews could use and get around this below-the-belt practice. The law forbade the construction of synagogues, but allowed the use of secular buildings as synagogues. And Kiev Jews literally jumped at the chance. Jews accounted for about 14% of the city population, so it was only a matter of time before they had their own house of worship. The brand new synagogue building popped up here in 1895. How come? The building was commissioned by the merchant and the famous patron of arts, Gabriel Jacob Rosenberg, as a private mansion and not as a synagogue. It was done intentionally and purposely to allow Jews to obtain a permit for a brand new synagogue. Shortly afterwards, the private mansion was converted into a full-fledged synagogue. Needless to say, it was a calculated move, of course. During the German occupation of Kiev during the Second World War, the Nazis turned the building into a stable. What utilitarianism and what mockery! The building became the center of Jewish Renaissance in the late 1980s and early 1990s. In those days, it was a favorite hangout for Kiev Jews. The street was full of activity. You had to literally elbow your way through the crowd to reach the building. And it was only natural, as it was not only a religious but also a major community center. From the architectural point of view, the main building is a good example of the neo-Moorish style. It was the brainchild of Kiev architect named Nikolai Gordenin, a graduate of Moscow School of Painting, Sculpture and Architecture. In the 2000s, 2 buildings were added on either side. This one houses a canteen for 100 people, a hotel and a kosher restaurant. The other building houses an Orthodox Jewish school, a student hostel and restrooms. The main building has a large hall for 300 people. The interior is embellished with stained glass windows telling stories from Jewish history. The dome is topped by the Star of David, also known as the Jewish Star. Its usage as a sign of Jewish identity became in the Middle Ages. Today, the star is used as the central symbol on the national flag of the State of Israel. Let me skip the religious meaning of this Jewish symbol and look into the secular interpretation of the hexagram, as it is nothing but a hexagram, a compound of 2 overlapping triangles. Out of a dozen explanations I found, the one that resonates with me reads: the 2 triangles typify the mingling of apparent opposites in nature, error and truth, ignorance and wisdom, evil and good. Let me continue this list by adding corruption and honesty, fraud and sincerity, theft and offering. The list goes on, you name it. In other words, the symbolic meaning of a hexagram comes down to a combination of the opposites. The key word here is the opposites, of course. And that's it for today. You may leave your comments in the description box below. Also, please donate any amount of money you think appropriate to help me continue producing my podcast and my videos about Ukraine. Check out my account details in the description box below. You can get in touch with me via email, interpreter.in.kiev@gmail.com. Until next time, from me, Natalia, goodbye.